There's nobody in here right now, but
Hey, you might want to let me know on the
I did.
Discord or something. Oh my God.
What?
I can't believe that happened. Yeah, nobody's here.
I can. Maybe. Guess.
I know.
Hello.
Hello.
Third time's the charm, right?
Oh my gosh. This thing, I swear. We StreamYard StreamYard's very new to us. It's the thing about it is you can do lives and you can put people's comments at the bottom. And it's great when you're interviewing somebody, but it's so touchy.
No.
Oh my gosh. But anyway, we're waiting for everybody to find their way back because I totally screwed this up.
Well, we can go ahead and get going because people can still watch this.
Mm-hmm.
It's just going to go up as soon as we're finished.
Yeah, no. Let's try this again.
Take a deep
for any new people, we're interviewing Ellie Alexander today. She's the very popular author of the Bake Shop Mysteries, the Sloan Krause Mysteries, and the Pacific Northwest Mysteries, which are awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. We've managed to get some people back. It's so nice. Hello again, everybody. So
it's part of the mystery. We're just adding an element of surprise. Like, how will we find you?
Yeah, we'll just label them part 1 and part 2.
Yeah.
That'd be the way we can do it.
If somebody dies, I'm leaving. So I have a question. Do you prefer physical books or would you rather have ebooks?
Physical, 100%, always. Okay. I know this is not going to be a popular position, but I actually like to dog ear pages. Sometimes I will even like make little notes of quotes that I love and things like that in books. It's kind of sacrilegious as an author to say that, but I think you should love a book all the way. Just eat it up.
I totally. It's your book. You're planning on keeping it. Why not just write all over it?
I know, but people get very protective of their books. Like I have a friend. If she loans you a book, she has her nameplate. You do not dog ear. Like it should come back pristine. Don't crack the spine, which I respect, and I'm very careful if I borrow a book. Actually, I don't borrow books very often because I like to write in them.
Yeah, we have a.
I know, Richardson. Sorry, I know. I said it's murder worthy. I get it.
Mark Richardson is a librarian.
Oh no, I'm dead now.
We can already sense the books flying through the air. It's great.
I know. I would never do that to a library book. Although this is also a true story. A couple years ago, I live in Ashland, where the Bake Shop Mysteries are set. And we have such a sweet library. And I have quite a few friends who are librarians who work at said library. And I checked out a library book that I read in the bathtub. And because we established in part 1 that I'm a total klutz, I dropped the book in the bathtub. So I had to do this like book walk of shame and return my swollen, ruined life, which I of course paid for, to the library with my head down. And everybody knows me as an author, so it's bad.
You know what though? That is better than dropping an iPad or a Kindle in the tub. That would really be an expensive replacement.
Good point. Thank you.
That would be something I would do.
Yeah.
Yeah. See, I tend to read more ebooks because I drop books on my face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hardcovers are dangerous.
I don't have good eyesight, and my glasses don't help close up. So I read more ebooks as well because I can adjust the font however I need it and stuff. But that's really the only reason. Otherwise, I would read physical books only. I love physical books.
Yeah, I have books everywhere.
I can see.
This is only 2 of them. They're everywhere. So, Paperback Junkie, Matt, he said, is that where you're from? Ashland, Oregon?
Yes. I live in Ashland and I write about Ashland. So it gets a little tricky. Sometimes I'm a Pacific Northwest girl, born and bred. I grew up in Portland, which is about 5 hours south. and I moved to Ashland 5 years ago now. So I've been here, but I was writing the series prior to living here. But I haven't always had an affinity to Ashland because, like I was telling you before, my dad taught Shakespeare, and the Oregon Shakespeare Festival really is here. So I grew up coming to Ashland.
Oh,
But
cool.
it is,
Okay.
yeah, it is still surreal though, because I will be walking in the plaza and I will think to myself, well, I should just pop into Tort, which is a fictional bake shop that only lives in my head. And 5 years later, I'll still think I should go see like what latte are they making today? And then I'll go, oh no, it's not real. Stop. Yeah.
Well, that segues into another question. Since you live in Ashland and you write about Ashland, do you actually write about people you know? Do you ever put your people you know in your books?
You know, typically I'm a big observer. So my degree is actually in speech therapy. I'm minored in creative writing, but I worked in early intervention for about 15 years before I started writing professionally. And in speech therapy, you have to really like listen and pay attention and observe, where speech and language is falling apart. So when I'm writing, I use those same techniques. So one of my favorite stories is, and this was before I was living in Ashland, I was down visiting for the weekend, for a long weekend. And I was in a bake shop just observing and like watching the baristas and the staff and everything and taking notes. And this woman stormed into the coffee shop and she cut the line and she just berated the poor barista and was like, my coffee was supposed to be 185 degrees and clearly it's only 160, which I'm like, how do you even know that from tasting? But whatever. She was awful. And so I was sitting in the corner just kind of like taking notes, and I thought, well, you could die in a book. So
Yeah.
she became the victim in Meet Your Baker.
Oh,
So be
okay.
careful. You never know who's watching.
Yeah.
I have this great image of you sitting in the corner going, I'm going to kill you.
I totally don't be mean to your baristas. They don't get paid enough.
I'm kind of sad that Lance is not based on a real person.
Lance is actually based on he's kind of an amalgam of two of my friends that I mashed together. And the only other person in the series who is real, or based on someone real, is Richard Lord, who is kind of the nemesis of town. He is based on a horrible boss that I had in high school. And I'm sure he wouldn't recognize himself if he read it because he's too, like, he wouldn't have that level of self-awareness. Yeah.
Right.
Richard Lord is awful.
He's awful.
Yeah. I haven't gotten to that series yet, but that is next for me.
Yeah.
I keep hoping he's going to be one of the people bumped off. It hasn't happened yet, Ellie.
I know.
So, Cozy asks, is the town exactly like you described? This is Ashland, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, it really is. It's just, I am preferential to mountains. I love mountains. So we are tucked in the Siskiyou Mountains. So to the west of me is just green mountains, evergreen forest as far as you can see. And right now, Mount Ashland is covered in snow. And then to the east are these gorgeous sepia-toned hills. And then Ashland is nestled kind of in the center of that. And
Wow.
the theater is right in the heart of town. You can walk everywhere. This morning I had to like work my way past deer and wild turkeys on my walk. So it's just, it's gorgeous. When and if we can be out and about and traveling again, please come visit. I'll take you on a tour.
I'd love to visit
Oh my
Ashland.
God, that would be so nice.
Any Shakespeare town is fine with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Becky's a big Shakespeare person.
I'm not.
Yeah.
Do you ever put yourself in your stories?
I think each of my protagonists are like a piece of who I am. With Jules, actually, this is another thing. This is true too. I can't believe I didn't bring this up, but in the bake shop specifically, Helen and the professor. So Helen is Jules' mom, and the professor is the longtime detective of the town. And they are both based on my parents. So my dad is the professor. Helen is my mom. My mom was an elementary school counselor and like a baker and everything. So Jules is definitely the baker in me. And Sloan, Scott, that you just finished, she's kind of me a little more grown up, I would say. She's a bit stronger. And my motivation and inspiration for her came from those years of working in early intervention, because I worked with a lot of families in the foster care system. And I think that sometimes in fiction, people who've been part of the foster care system often get painted in this brush of that they're all really broken, and
Exactly. Yeah.
that just wasn't true in my experience. You see a lot of resiliency in these kids and families, and so I love that strength that I get to show in Sloan.
That's great.
Yeah, that is great.
Yeah, kids are usually more resilient than people give them credit for.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, that's kind of like, that is sort of her foundation, but it shows like who she's become too.
Or I think it's really sad. I grew up in a poor area and all that, and kids are taught not to be resilient by some adults, and I find that really sad.
Yeah.
They see the broken adults, and they become broken children, and it's a terrible tragedy in my opinion.
Yeah, when you see that kind of systemically through families.
Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine as a speech therapist, it was kind of hard to fight against that with your kids, with the parents.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
She has cousins from the Rogue River. Yeah, Rogue River is beautiful. It's about 20 miles north of here.
Oh, what am I doing? I'm doing something. Okay, here we go. I put it back. I'm sorry. The people on BookTube were from everywhere. And they were singing the praises of your Pacific Northwest series in the chat earlier.
We have a couple of Californians on here. We have a Vermont person. We got a Georgia person.
Got some Arizona people.
I always say that books bring us together, so that's proof, right?
Yeah. Well,
they really do.
Books have helped us to travel places we can't go, and that's really one of the main reasons we read books. And that is something that Cozy Mysteries do so well, is they explain and they describe the places that they're about so well, whereas a lot of places you really have to imagine everything, in a lot of books. But Cozy Mysteries, that's one thing I do appreciate about them.
So there's a question I wanted to ask. Your bake shop mysteries, you come up with some of the best recipes. You should read some of the food she writes about. It's crazy.
It's dangerous.
I love the beer she was writing about too.
Do you come up with your recipes, or do you get them from other people, or how does that work?
I do. So a lot of them, when I started the series, it was a lot of family recipes, because baking really just was such a love language for me growing up in my family. Everybody was always in the kitchen. You might have like a big party and there's like all this space outside on the deck, but everybody's crammed into my parents' like tiny kitchen. And my mom and dad had very different baking styles. So my dad, like his Shakespeare, will spend a weekend like making this beautiful 8-layer torte and hand piping it and making homemade marmalade. And then my mom was like a Betty Crocker, like slap on more chocolate frosting than, cake. Everything tasted good. So
I'm firmly in your mom's corner.
Well, yeah, I know, me too. My cakes don't always look beautiful, but they usually taste pretty good. So initially it was a lot of family recipes in Meet Your Baker. The first recipe is my mom's, the second's my dad's. There's a recipe from my sister in there. As the series has grown, I'm working on book 15 right now. I'm like, I don't know what I'm going to run out of first. Am I going to run out of ways to kill people or recipes? I don't know.
Ashland is quickly becoming a very dangerous place to live.
That's right.
Cozy asked if you've ever thought of opening a bake shop in Ashland and calling it Tort.
I would love to open Tort in real life in Ashland at some point in time, because I do have this giant stockpile of recipes now, and I'll have like 15 plus books worth. I just don't know that I have the space to be able to do like the time on my own. So I need to figure out a way to like partner with somebody who knows real baking. But yeah, I would love to, or maybe like Tort to go or something. I don't know. So
I have a question about the Sloan Krause mysteries. did you study beer to beer making and stuff like this for the book, or was it something you had already known about?
No, I didn't know. And I know enough about everything just to be like slightly dangerous. Like I can pretend that I'm a
Right.
pastry chef. I can pretend that I know how to brew. My husband does homebrew. So he's been homebrewing
Okay.
for about 10 years. So that's kind of how that came to be. And since I said I grew up in Portland, Portland was kind of, and still is to this day, the beer capital of the world, or they claim to be. I know there are other great craft beer hotspots. But when I was thinking about that series, I had read an article about this group called the Pink Boots Society. And it's a whole group of women who kind of banded together to support one another in the craft, because not technically, oftentimes you don't think of women and craft beer together. You know, it's often been pretty male dominated.
Yes.
So there's this whole group that formed, and I thought, oh, that's really fascinating. So I've spent a lot of time interviewing real brewers and being behind the scenes. I know enough to probably brew like a terrible batch, but you might not want to drink it. My baking skills are better than my brewing skills.
Kind of like Van's batch of beer and Death
Yeah.
on Tap. Yeah.
Exactly.
But yeah, that was a statement I was actually going to make. The brewing and distilling community, there are a lot more women now who are master distillers, who are main distillers, head distillers at some whiskey companies, and so we're starting to see more and more of that, and I find that great. I think it's about time, because it has been male dominated for a long time, since the beginning, pretty much.
It's kind of what makes the Sloan Krause series so compelling, is you have a woman firmly entrenched in a man's world.
Right.
Yeah.
And I agree. I think, like, there's been a big shift within the last 5 or 10 years. And I also think one of the things that I find so fascinating, and probably a reason that I enjoy the research and doing this deep dive, is the process of brewing and baking are really very similar. It's a lot of science meets creativity. You're blending these flavors and combinations, but you're always kind of starting with these core ingredients. So I find that fascinating.
And they both take a really advanced kind of palate in order to become an expert at it, because you have to know what it's going to taste like and all that before you even start.
Right.
Yeah.
I think Mark Richardson he's kind of underselling it. Beer is liquid bread.
Oh,
but it's true. Like, beer is just a bread that hasn't fermented all the way.
It depends on what kind of beer. What kind of beer, Ellie?
So Matt from Paperback Junkie was asking how long it takes you to write a book.
Oh, well, I write a really terrible, awful, no good first draft in 6 weeks. So I write 2,000 words every day when I'm working on a first draft.
Ooh. Wow.
I have a really regimented schedule, and that started because when I first transitioned into writing professionally, I kind of had this period where I was writing for like a lot of newspapers and magazines, which is how the Pacific Northwest series came about. But my son was in elementary school, and so I had a finite time. I dropped him off at 8 and I had to pick him up at 2. So I trained myself to write during those time, that window of time. So I write 2,000 words a day, Monday through Friday. That gives me an awful first draft that no one would want to read in 6 weeks. And then I set that aside and I don't look at it for probably 2 or 3 months. I will also say that when I'm on a first draft, I have a notepad next to me, and I don't change anything. I just make notes of things that I know I'm going to change later.
Okay.
And then I'll spend probably another 2 months after I come back to it with fresh eyes, kind of layering. So I'll go through and I'll do a whole layer of those initial edits from my notebook. And then I'll do like a setting layer where I'm really describing Leavenworth and Ashland. And then the last layer that I do is always the food or the beer.
Oh, that's cool. Okay.
So do you write like a really extensive outline before you throw yourself into writing your book, or do you just sort of throw yourself on it face first and hope for the best?
No, I'm definitely an outliner. So I have usually like a 30-page sketch to go off of. I always start from the body and work my way back, because I think that just naturally adds red herrings in too, because you always know who the killer's going to be.
Okay.
Okay,
Cool.
that makes sense. What next?
Here, let's do this one.
Oh yeah,
Cozy had a question
what
here.
happened? Oh,
There
there
we
you
go.
go.
What was your inspiration behind the Pacific Northwest Mysteries? And the premise is so unique and interesting.
Well, this question's slightly embarrassing because let's go back to the fact that I'm a total klutz and I spill on myself. The Pacific Northwest Mysteries is my first mystery series that I wrote. It has 5 books in it, but a couple of them have already kind of fallen out of print. But I will tell you, I'm working on something new with it, which is super exciting. But the premise of that is that Meg Reed is fresh out of college. She's in her 20s. She wants to be a Pulitzer Prize winning journalist, but she can't get a job because newspapers are dying. This is all true. I wrote this series in like 2010, I think. So think like, mid-century or mid-20s. And so she claims to be this outdoor adventure girl in order to land a job writing for an outdoor magazine, when in reality, she has not an athletic bone in her body. She's terrified of heights. She loves all things pink. So I pulled some of those themes, I would say, from my early 20s. I had a 6-month eco challenge class where I spent 6 months backpacking through New Zealand and Australia, and somehow I got college credit for it. Don't ask me how. But
Nice.
I know it would be things like you would zip line off the top of a cliff to get a free beer at the pub. So I would zip line and then zip line fine, and then like I broke my ankle getting out of the harness, like that kind of stuff.
Wow.
That is something I would do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
Of course, I've had broken ankles and stuff too. I guess I'm kind of klutzy too. We just never talk about it.
Yeah, I know.
We pretend it's not there.
Exactly. Yeah. So she's very young and she makes some bad decisions, but over the course of the series, she grows. And my idea for bringing her back is that she'll come back maybe like 10 years later where she's grown and matured a little bit.
Oh, that sort of segues into another question. I love it when that happens. Do you have anything new in the works that you're planning for your writing?
I do. So I'm writing lots more bake shops. The 5th book in Sloane Krause comes out in October, so that's exciting. And then, I have this idea to bring Meg back, but I don't know if it's going to be a mystery. It might be something totally new, but I would take the entire cast from the series and bring them all back.
That would be neat.
Just started working on it, so it could be a train wreck and a total disaster. But we'll see. I think it would be a good challenge for me because at this point I've written 25 mysteries, and I will never give up writing mysteries, but it's kind of fun to do something that's totally different and out of that lane to keep growing myself as a writer, which I think is important.
Mm-hmm.
And this past year I've actually written 2 brand new things that are still in the works that are not mysteries too. So that's exciting.
Oh, cool.
Yay.
Yeah, we read all kinds of stuff. We actually read romance books together and all that too. So
yeah,
we
read everything.
Yeah, we read everything. But another thing I was going to tell people, if they're on the fence about getting into cozy mystery, especially for men, they're just, I think there are more men that read cozy mysteries than let on
And
that
care
they
to
do.
admit.
But than care to admit. But I think this is a great place to start for male cozy mystery readers, because who doesn't like a good beer? And this book really does go into the process of beer making and stuff in a really interesting way, and it makes me want to start brewing again. So,
Well, that sort of branches into what Dania Spinelli Speaks says. Do you do a lot of research before writing a new book? And it's one thing that I argue when an author goes into a new book and she gives her character a profession, do you really dive deep into that profession? Like we know Juliet, she's a baker. She's been a baker for years. Did you dive into the world of baking for large people or large people? Large groups of people is what I meant. So do you do a lot of research when you go into a Shush. You go into a new profession.
I do. I mean, for me, because I'm such a reader too, like I want it to feel as authentic as possible.
Right.
And so I shadowed pastry chefs. I learned so much about the working process of a kitchen. I spent time on a cruise ship kitchen for one book in particular, partway through the series where she goes on a cruise. I have been so fortunate to have multiple pastry chefs and real chefs because there's a difference in that world. It's fascinating. You know, a lot of chefs don't want to belittle themselves by going into the world of pastry. And pastry has so much artistry to it as well, which I don't have an artistic bone in my body. So there are a lot of design elements that come into that part. I think the reason that writing is such a good match for me is if I could, I would be a perennial college student. Like I loved college. And so every time I start a new book or a new series, I do get to do that deep dive where I feel like I'm a student and I just like, give me all of it.
So, Mark Richardson, I don't think the cozies are your cup of tea, but he's very, very interested in shipping and sailing, but we're talking about cruise ships.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, pastry cruise ships.
I think Mark worked on a ship at one point.
Well, that would make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. The main character in the Bake Shop Mysteries, for those of you who don't know, she worked on a cruise ship for several years. She was married to a great guy that I really wanted to hate in the first two books, but it didn't happen. And, it was an emotional roller coaster.
It was for me too. Trust me.
Yeah.
I'd come upstairs from writing, and my husband would be like, "You got to take a break, man." I'd be like, "Okay, just like, give me a second."
So there's a good question. When you started the Bake Shop Mysteries, did you know how things were going to go with Juliet and the men in her life?
I thought I did. Yeah, I thought I did, but I did not, is the answer.
Okay.
I had an arc because I think, one thing I talk to new writers about, new writers get really hooked on story and plot, which of course is important. But hopefully what is a theme in every single book that we read, no matter what genre, is that every character is going through a journey. So like, focus on that. Like start with your character and send them on some sort of quest, and then put all kinds of things in their way that are going to stop them from reaching that end goal. Like if you can manage that, you've got a story on your hand. Then the plot and everything else can evolve. So I did that for Jules, and I had such a good plan, or so I thought. I had it all whiteboarded out. I have my whiteboard on this side of me. And then, yeah, everything just fell apart because apparently my character had a totally different idea. And I didn't believe that when I first started writing. I would often hear writers say, "Oh, well, my characters went off the page and did their own thing." And I would be like, "Oh, come on." Like, no, they didn't. Oh, no, they do. They really do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does that happen to you often? Or
it does now. It didn't at the beginning, but it does now. And I think the gift of writing a long running series is I don't really have to think now about how someone's voice is going to sound. I don't have to, like, if Lance shows up on the scene, I know he's going to be like, "Oh, honey, like that, darling, come on."
Lance is the absolute fabulous director of the Shakespeare Company in Ashland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's my favorite character. Who is your favorite character to write?
Probably Lance. Yeah. Just because he can do such outlandish things too. And it's okay. I couldn't set this series really in many places other than Ashland because it's not fiction to think that you would walk downtown in the plaza and see people in full costume or just, have a spontaneous song and dance number breakout. I mean, that really does happen. And so I get to play off of that a little bit more than you might somewhere else. And that theater vibe, theater people are theater people, which I love. And they're just out there. And so for me, that's so much fun.
I really hoped that would be your answer. I love Lance. He's just one of the best characters to watch and to read, but it's watching to me.
And Mark is asking, do you write on a computer?
I do. Yep. When I'm doing that word count, 2,000 words a day, that's all on my computer. Although I will say that I sketch out the outline first because I kind of use these charts for each suspect and what they're lying and hiding about. And then once I finish a book, I print it out and I always pencil through a first draft on paper. After that, I will use Word again. But there's something about like reading through a first draft that I still need paper for.
Okay.
This is a really, really great question. Cozy, she asks, can you ever turn off book ideas? Do they always pop up in your head or do you only think about it when you write?
That is a good question. I think because going back to kind of having that like regimented writing schedule Monday through Friday, 8 to 2, I really I've trained my creative brain for that. When I'm done with the day, and that's one of the reasons that I don't edit anything as I go. I take notes and I know, okay, I'm going to fix that later. So I don't have trouble turning it off when I'm like in a first draft. Usually though, my best ideas, if I'm like, oh, something's not working or I want to fix something or a new book idea, those almost always happen when I'm outside, like walking or hiking. Almost never when I have paper or anything to write an idea down.
Of course, yeah. Yeah.
That's the way those things happen. Let's see. I've already gone through that. Did you always want to be a writer? I know you said you were a speech therapist for quite a while. Has writing always been sort of your end goal, or?
Yeah, I wrote my very first mystery in second grade, which I still have a copy of today. So I wrote all through elementary school, through high school, through college. I wrote just terrible first drafts that will never see the light of day. And I minored in creative writing. I knew I wanted to write, but I didn't know how I was going to make money at it, especially in my 20s. Like I have to pay for an apartment and food. And so I think for myself, coming back to writing in my mid 30s was helpful because I had all of this life experience that I could pull from that I didn't have early on. And then I think I continue to read, and reading makes the best writers, hands down. Like you have to read and read and read and read and read to help find your voice.
Right.
Yeah, that's why I've always heard you have to be a reader before you can be a writer.
Yeah.
And Storm, any advice for an aspiring author? Do reading books on writing help any? Does reading books on writing help any?
Yeah. I mean, I think first of all, just read everything you can get your hands on, and don't just read mysteries. I mean, yes, you should read what you want to write, first of all.
Yeah.
And you should pick 5, 10 novels in that lane, but then you should read a bunch of other stuff because you're going to learn so much in reading outside of the genre too. And then absolutely, I think, I spent probably 5 years when I was writing, like freelancing for magazines and newspapers, reading how-to books, going to conferences. I did workshops and classes. So anything that you can do to improve your craft, of course, and learn like the structure and that kind of thing is important. But I also just think you should start writing and just embrace the idea that everything you write early on is probably not going to be the book that gets published. Like the story that I love to tell is in my early 20s, I wrote this manuscript that never went anywhere, and I still have to this day. The title, get this, was One Dead Toe. Why? I don't know.
I don't know if you've seen some of the punny titles this here of late, that might actually make it.
Yeah, now it might come back, but my hair got crazy. But I wrote so much that never went anywhere. But that practice of going through the motions of writing and finding your voice, I think is so important. So I think you should just embrace starting and not worry about whether that book's going to get published or where it's going initially first.
The people in the chat are really, really enjoying the idea of one dead toe.
I know. It was like this one vision of this doctor coming in, and her patient had frostbite in one toe. And really, the story doesn't go much farther than that. After multiple attempts at it.
Interesting.
I don't know. I still like the idea.
So Mark's
see.
lying to us. Mark is not in his 60s. There's no way, right?
No, I just don't see it.
Yeah.
But he asked, do you ever do NaNoWriMo?
I have not done NaNoWriMo. I have a class that I teach now. I have a mystery series masterclass. So I'm teaching writers how to write mysteries, which is so exciting. I'm more excited for them, I think, than they are for themselves. It's like having a kid all over again. But really with NaNoWriMo, I highly recommend it. And I kind of NaNoWriMo myself every time, because I write that bad first draft in 6 weeks, which is the goal of NaNoWriMo. It's just to get you in that rhythm of writing every day. I always think of it like a muscle. You know, if you want better arms, you have to go to the gym and lift every day, which I don't do. But if I really wanted tone arms, I would do it. And writing's the same way, that once you get in that habit, you build muscle memory. So each time you come back to it, it gets easier and easier and easier.
Your masterclass, do you teach it like in person or online, or?
It's all online. Yeah. So it's, I did this project this year during COVID because I had time, because I wasn't traveling so much. I've been asked for years to teach a class. So I took everything that has been swimming in my brain for the last 10, 15 years of mystery writing, and it's all in video format. So it's at your own pace, but then I have private Facebook groups and I do live chats with writers just to like keep them on task. It's been really fun. I'm surprised at how rewarding it is to be on the other side, because I would have wanted that for myself, because I think I just pieced so much stuff together and I had so much self-doubt. So it's fun to be able to be a bit more of a cheerleader for people. Like, no, just write. It's going to be okay. Like,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've got a guy on here. Well, he's been in the chat, Paperback Junkie. His name's Matt, and he does, like writing sprints and writing races and stuff for people, just to get people to sit down and start typing, because that's where it starts. I mean, if you can't sit and type, then you can't do you can't be a writer. So I'm going to try. I'm actually trying my hand at writing this weekend for the first time. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm pretty excited.
That's awesome. And I think like, there's sort of this myth that I am making it one of my like personal goals to squash, that in the world of writing, there's this idea of scarcity. Oh, I don't want to tell you my idea, or no, you can't write because I'm writing, which is just not true. There's abundance. Right. Like, everyone has a story to tell. And we know, because we're readers. I'm not just going to be like, I'm only going to read this one author and I'm just that one book a year. No, you're going to read everything you can get your hands on. So that's awesome.
Yeah.
I love this question. So Libraries and Labradors asks, what authors would you fangirl if you met them, dead or alive?
That is great. Well, let's see. Willa Cather. I love Willa Cather's poetry or fiction. Mary Oliver. She is my all-time favorite poet. Jane Austen. Brene Brown. I love myself some Brene Brown. I love Elizabeth Gilbert for modern writer. Oh, so many. I mean, do you want me to talk for 2 hours? I will. Let's go.
I'm here for it. What's your favorite Jane Austen book?
I think it's Persuasion.
Yay!
She was hoping you'd say that.
I know, everybody says Pride and Prejudice, but Persuasion doesn't get enough love.
You know, I read Persuasion last year, and
for the first time,
and it firmly knocked Pride and Prejudice off of the pedestal. The pedal.
Yeah.
It's that letter is it's the end all be all of all.
With you.
Mark Richardson, who only reads Clive Cussler?
Wow.
He's saying, okay, but Mark, come on. That is an anomaly. I say most readers read everything. But yeah, my husband is a big Clive Cussler fan, but he'll read everything else too, not just Clive.
Yeah, Cussler's great.
He is great.
I think Cussler's very good, but after a couple, I have to go read something else. You know.
Sahara. I loved Sahara.
Oh yeah, Sahara was so good, and I like Raise the Titanic. Came out in the 70s, I believe. I love that book. Wow.
I've never read Sahara. I've only seen the movie.
Well, you need to read the book.
The book's better.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. I'm not a big Matthew McConaughey fan,
Yeah.
so it did not do it for me at all.
I feel you.
So you're talking about how you put, oh yeah, you're talking about how you put together like a good rough draft in 6 weeks. Do you ever just sort of DNF well, do not finish an idea? Like you get halfway into what you think is a really great plot and just sort of go, no, that don't work, and just toss it out? Or
I don't actually. I know. I'm trying to think. I have had instances where I always complete a first draft. I have had instances where I thought I knew who the murderer was, you know, like I had a good motive and I had built the tension in a first draft pretty well. And then I read the first draft back and I realized, oh no, I don't want that person to be the killer. And I've had to go back and change things. But I don't think I've ever DNF'd a manuscript, I mean, minus my early years of One Dead Toe and
Yeah.
I'm holding out hope for One Dead Toe. You have no idea.
Well, now you know, if there's like some murder in a future book, that will be your Easter egg. You're like, okay.
All right.
The people in the chat are asking better questions than I am. Libraries and Labradors asked, what does your husband read your books prior to publication?
He does. Yes. He was a journalism school major. We met in college.
Oh, yeah.
And he's a very eclectic reader too. He reads, Clive Cussler. He reads a lot of James Rollins. He reads a lot of sci-fi. So he shares his sci-fi with me. He's gotten me into sci-fi in a way that I never imagined.
It's the same for us.
He reads every draft and he's a great editor. So he will go through and make edits and everything for me once I get to final edits myself before I send it off to the publishing house.
Well, I've got that too with Becky. Becky's a English major. She has a master's degree in professional writing. So if I need to send something to her, I'll just do that. Yeah. I can do that.
You know, so what's really funny about that is I work in the early intervention field too.
Ah, of course.
It sort of goes around.
We're kindred spirits.
I think so. I got it. Okay, so we're going to do a couple more questions, and then we're going to have to wrap this up. It says it's only been going for 42 minutes, but then we had that monumental mess up with the. So, Cozy asked, "Do you have any hobbies you enjoy?"
I do. Aside from reading would be first. Reading in the bathtub is like my go-to, even when I drop library books in. I love to hike. I am definitely an outdoors person. I am not an adventure enthusiast, like from the Meg books. Ziplining for a beer would be the extent of that. And I'm a big swimmer. I still teach swimming to the little guys, although not right now because of COVID, but I've been a swimmer for many, 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 many years, and I love being in the pool. And I love baking.
Okay.
All right.
Nice. I really want to go swimming now. This is a really good question that I'd like to ask every author ever.
This is Alan.
This is Alan from the Lonely Bookshelf. He asked, do you read reviews of your books?
You know, I did early on, and then I learned that's a bad idea. I have a Brene Brown podcast that I think this goes back to, I can't remember who asked about what you should do if you want to be a writer. You should go watch Brene Brown's Sweaty Creative podcast. YouTube, not a podcast, it's YouTube. It was like a TED Talk. I can send you a link if you want when you're done and you guys can share
Absolutely.
it.
That'd be awesome.
Not that I'm getting anything back from Brene. I just fangirl her, but it's all about the idea that if you're the one that's down in the arena and you're doing that creative work and you are putting yourself out there, that nobody else that's sitting up there observing in the cheap seats, like they don't get a voice in your head. And I think that's such an important lesson. And it took me a while to learn, but it's true because once I've written a book, like it's out there for the world and somebody might hate it. And that's okay because I know for myself, there are books that my best friend has read that we have similar taste and I pick up and I just can't get into. Or I've had books that I've tried 2 or 3 times and I'm just not in the right headspace for. And then I go back to and I fall in love with, and I'm like, why didn't I, so it's all so subjective. But I think to protect your tender soul as a writer, there's absolutely no reason to read those. Now, I will read professional reviews. Like my publicist will send me a review if it gets reviewed by Publishers Weekly or Kirkus or Mystery Scene. So I will read those, but I don't read reviews, as I just don't think it's good for you. And it's not necessarily even great in terms of if somebody's just like, I loved it, like I appreciate that you loved it, but that's not going to change what I'm doing writing wise either. So yeah.
It's a very good mental health strategy.
It is.
Yeah, I'm sure that's correct. Yeah.
So that's all of our questions. Thank you so much for joining us. This was wonderful.
Yeah, we really enjoyed this.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
I'm really sorry about the technical difficulties at the beginning.
It's all good.
We'll get so
So where can everybody find you?
You can find me at elliealexander.co, and that really is co, not com. And from there, you can find me everywhere. I'm on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and Instagram and all the places.
Okay.
all right.
Yeah, I actually looked at your website. It's very well done. So yeah, it's excellent.
That's my husband. No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's awesome that you have such a good support system.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah. It's so important. Well, I mean, and it's like symbiotic too, right? Like you guys, where you're like, oh, we have crossovers, and then we have things that we're good at in different ways, which is so
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's why we get along so well for booktubing and stuff like that. We feed off of each other. We try to always keep it constructive, always friendly.
Right.
So yeah.
And we give each other all sorts of crap. It's great.
Yeah.
Totally.
So thank you so much for joining us, Ellie Alexander. We're all looking forward to your next books.
Yeah, we are.
I know I am. So that's it for today. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's been fun.
Bye-bye.
Bye.